Ryan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Davy, and good afternoon to all of your listeners on Freedom 106.5 FM. Great to be back.
Listen to the man now. That is the fella that's watching TV every night. Hey, Ryan, COP28. Yesterday I spoke to a Guyanese journalist who spoke to me on it. Of course, climate change is a very serious issue for us in the world. A lot of persons in Trinidad and Tobago don't think there's any bearing for us here. But when you look at coastal erosion and the fact that people's livelihoods depend on those coastal lines for fishing and different things, climate change does affect us.
Yeah, I think you've gone very far. I think we look at the sweltering heat right now that's happening in the city. Unprecedented heat. We've never had this before. We've just been through the hottest year in the period in the history of our planet. Scientists predict that this year could be hotter than last year. So it's
you just bringing bad news.
Yeah, so it's right in our faces every single day. But you make a very good point. Those on the coastlines of Trinidad and Tobago are going to face a great deal of trauma when it comes to both their lives, where they live, and their livelihoods, because a lot of these people who live on the coast are into fishing.
That's my point.
Fish may migrate, so
that's it.
Long-standing problems that could come to haunt us.
The thing about it is, when I went to Jamaica last year, I had a few trips back and forth. I remember coming off the plane, and when I exited Norman Manley International, and the heat hit me. I was like, this different.
It's different from what we grew up in, right?
I started to appreciate Trinidad heat. I said, nah, boy. And then I went down to Spanish Gold Hotel and I started doing maintenance, my B2Bs. And then I vexed to leave the hotel to go across the street just to get something because the heat is terrible. At nights, oh my gosh. And then I started to say, you know what? I love Trinidad. You see, our heat over here is different. Jamaica, but different heat. And then I came back home and I said, nah, boy. We turn up the dial a little bit. The thermometer,
It's gotten bad. For me, I think that last year was being one of the hottest that I've lived in this country all my life, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything like 2023. The temperatures just soared.
They say them AC men and them like this. So we have Dizzanne Billy on our Zoom link with us. Miss Dizzanne, are you there? Can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Hello, hi. Yes, hello everyone, and hi Ryan, hi Davy as well. It's good to be here.
So a little bit of a background between Dizzanne and myself. I know Hipolito will join us. I believe journalist will join us as well. I know Dizzanne for the last couple of years, a little bit over 2 years. She's from Climate Tracker. She's a Caribbean Regional Director for Climate Tracker. And she's been doing incredible work in helping journalists like myself cover climate stories, tell climate stories, and get the important facts out and statistics out and stories out when it comes to climate journalism. So really happy that Dizzanne, who is incredibly busy, can join us on the program.
Well, we have a few minutes to chat with you all, and I'm still waiting till we get Hipolito to join us. In the meantime, we're talking COP28, Dizzanne, and of course, you and Ryan had the privilege to be there. And I would like to I spoke to Ryan at the inauguration of it in the early stages when Ryan was there. So I would like to get your thoughts, especially with the president being a head of a fossil fuel organization or oil-based company out there that was actually geared toward presiding over the COP28. Can you share your experiences and your thoughts on that?
So I don't know how much leeway I have, but the name of this, is freedom. So I'm gonna guess that I have some message, some level of.
We like to make it. We like to believe our tagline stands: "Speak your mind."
Yeah. So basically, as you mentioned, it started off on that whole narrative about the presidency having so many oil friends and being involved in oil and gas, and this COP being basically having triple the amount of fossil fuels representation than last year's COP, and last year's COP had the most in history. So for a lot of people, when they were asking me about it, I said my first response, because I felt so despondent, was it was a big oil show. That's how I felt personally. But there were a couple good things that came out of the COP. But this COP being my fourth one, I think it was the most overwhelming COP that I've ever experienced, generally speaking.
All right. Well, give some examples. If you can run parallel to the previous one to this one, if there was a change or any thing that was different that you can speak to.
Yeah, so for sure. So this one, as Ryan would know, I think was massive in terms of both the amount of registrants. So last year we had 40,000 registrants, which was the most ever. And I'm talking about this is from the growth of like the first COP that had like 4,000, right?
Wow.
So this is COP20. COP27 had like 40,000, and then this COP had over 100,000 people registered. You know what I mean? So it was very overwhelming in that sense, as well as the fact that I think I was clocking like 30,000 steps a day. That's how huge the venue was. There were a lot of press covering a lot of the stories and so on. So, but what I think, and that's why Climate Tracker, and Ryan would have mentioned, that I'm involved with Climate Tracker. What we do is really try to get people from underrepresented countries at COP, and Ryan did such an amazing job last year at COP in Egypt. And we're just really happy to be connected with Ryan, because I think this year, he did a really great job covering COP this year as well. I'm just really proud to see what is coming out of the Caribbean. This year we had, through the work that we do with Climate Tracker, we had the most Caribbean representation of all the media houses that were there, and the most that we've ever had at Climate Tracker. So it's just really about building, representing the actual climate vulnerable countries in the world at COP.
Well, given that you both would have been part of COP27, COP28, and I'm not going beyond that, I will stick within this, the last two. Did it live up to its expectations? I know for the point of view of the registrants, they would have been, as you said, exceeded 100,000, and last year was just 40. So that's just one good point we can see coming out. We are recognizing that people are becoming more cognizant of the climate change that is affecting humanity. So with that, would you both, Ryan and Dizzanne, agree that this would have exceeded expectations?
I think the numbers show that, certainly more people want to attend these conferences. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I think a city like Dubai attracts people. You yourself admitted that that's somewhere that you would like to travel. And it's probably not for work. It's probably for leisure.
Just for leisure,
It's probably because you want to see the tallest building in the world. You want to see some of the best tourism spots that the world has to offer. It's a very expensive, beautiful city. So I don't know that a measuring stick of success is the numbers. But what I can say, to answer your question directly, does it serve the purpose? I think we have to get into what is being done, not only at COP, but more importantly, in between COPs. And you asked the question in a very good way, because it's important that we look back on what was achieved in between COP28 and COP29. Sorry, my
27.
Bad. COP27, correct, and COP28. And then that's how we're going to measure the success of COP28 in between COP28 and COP29. So I think you've asked the question in a very, very good way.
Thank you.
And I think that's where the world has struggled. The simple answer to it, Davy, is that we have not been doing very good. Does it serve its purpose? It serves its purpose. There is an agenda that came out of COP28. Has the world and its politicians and its leaders actually followed that agenda? Absolutely not, because what did the global stocktake show us at COP28? That we are way, way off the climate targets that we set for ourselves 9 years ago in Paris. I want to give Dizzanne a chance to also answer this question, but I think to answer your question directly, I think the COPs itself serve its purpose. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's all we have at the moment. But after that, the political will to nail home what is achieved at COPs, I think...
Kevin, where you grew up? You grew up country?
I grew up in Arima, but my parents are from...
Has delivered a package of agreements, right? So it's the United Arab Emirates Consensus.
Yes.
That's what it's known as. And it does set sort of a pathway for global climate action in the years to come. In many ways, it was a historic outcome because it was sort of a litmus test or a signal on fossil fuel phase out. And so COP28, one of the things that they are praising is the fact that fossil fuel phase out was mentioned But I think that's as far as it goes with regards to fossil fuel being mentioned in that consensus. Because when you actually look at the text that comes out of the negotiations, it's very, very watered down, right? So there was a lot of progress was made at Glasgow. This was COP26, where they started discussing fossil fuels more and whatnot. But the outcome at COP28 was very much it doesn't say you have to do this and we will phase down this. It's more like we advise that fossil fuels eventually be phased out, maybe kind of situation, and that is not what we need. And that's why you look at the sort of like the feedback from small island developing states and the Alliance of Small Island Developing States, AOSIS, which is a negotiating bloc for the Caribbean and other small island developing states. They were outraged, right? As anybody from an island nation would be, because the impact of the fossil fuel industry is basically the core of climate change. You know what I mean? So I think if we look at it from that perspective, yes, fossil fuel phase out was mentioned, but it doesn't take it seriously. However, also despite the consensus and the sense of political shift towards transformational action and financing, I think that COP28's gains were probably incremental. So yes, there was the establishment and capitalization of the loss and damage fund, but it was just pledges. So pledges were made, yes, towards having money there and finances there to associate with loss and damage, but there's nothing to hold these countries accountable for those pledges that were made. So, and that those were just the two big headlines: loss and damage and fossil fuel phase out. We can go more and more in depth into other things like the global goal and adaptation and all these things, but those two headlines on what the UAE is touting as reasons why COP was successful, I think there's so much that you could just break it down and see, really and truly what came out of it.
You see, for me, when I pay attention to what is happening, welcome, Hipolito. Good afternoon. Are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. How was the weather in Belize at this time?
It's really sunny now in Belize.
Well, we have it sunny down here in Trinidad too. We're loving it.
That's good.
My favorite
good
time
weather.
of the year. When I think about the COP28, of course, it's generated towards climate change and the removal of fossil fuels as one of the main focal points. When you look at fossil fuels and the oil giants out there, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. What do you think that it is actually? I'm looking for the right word. Are we managing our expectations in the correct manner? Thinking that it is going to be a quick fix, we can easily phase out and get these oil giants to say, listen, let me just give up this. How are we going to get greenhouse gases? How are we going to get cleaner fuel to be... You're talking about my entire plan that bringing me billions. I am actually eating and drinking to my leisure, traveling, continuing to export my oils. How are you coming to tell me that I need to pay attention to climate change at this time when I'm seeing the dollar in the bank rising steadily because of my fossil fuels,
Well, one thing, Davy. One thing I'll tell you about that is the fact that fossil fuels, that is the past. If you want your economy to be successful in the near future, now and the near future, you have to start divesting.
But even if but that's a cut. But even if you're divesting, doesn't the electricity use fossil fuel to generate plants? So even if we go down that road, have we moved how are we going to do it there? I mean, this is just the questions that the layman on the ground is thinking about. I'm thinking about the man in the middle seat in a taxi right now, trying to understand this, because we can talk about all these adaptations. We can go there with it. But how do we get them to appreciate what we are saying and the importance of it? This is what I'm trying to get from Ryan, of course, you guys.
Let me answer it in my way. So the first, I think it's a misconception that people think that climate journalists, climate experts, that climate change activists think that or want a complete phase out of fossil fuels by tomorrow morning. I think that's the great misconception. It's not so. Most climate experts, most climate analysts, most climate activists are realistic that this is not something that can be ended next year or the next 5 years. I
Agreed.
think what a lot of right-thinking, non-radical climate activists and experts, and even those who tell stories like myself, truly believe, is that in between me growing up in the 90s and now, we've constantly heard about the need to phase out fossil fuels.
All the time.
We haven't gotten anywhere. There's been no political will, nor has there been any political movement from the grandest of developed countries to
us.
even us that are fossil fuel dependent. So I think it's more of a question of how do we get to a point where we start seriously phasing out as opposed to just stopping it altogether. It's impossible. All of us will agree on this call. We may have differing opinions, but we will all agree that it's not possible for a small island developing state like Trinidad and Tobago, or even a developed nation like the United States, to stop fossil fuel production and selling tomorrow, because our economies are dependent on it. But where is the plan? Where is the tangible plan and ultimate beginning of execution for us to move to a place where we could begin seeing fossil fuel use drop? We haven't seen that. We've heard a lot of conversations, we've seen a lot of documents, but the truth is, in 30 years of my life, I haven't seen it. This conversation started before I was born. We haven't seen it. And it's getting frustrated now more than ever because the effects of climate change are now more glaring. If you don't want to believe the science, because I understand people have, problems believing the science and the projected increases in temperatures and global warming. But there are very real examples before our very eyes happening right here in the Caribbean. When we travel to Europe and the violent storms and the rainfall, there are very real examples happening before our eyes that we can believe.
But then here's my question. We had 27 of them before. I'm not going so far back. Let's say the last 4 COPs that we would have had leading up to COP28. Every time these meetings are held, the world leaders come together, heads of governments meet, and there is an agenda. There is a template rolled out. Let us talk about what was accomplished from COP25 to COP20. What was done in COP20? What was talked about in COP24 that we at COP28 we don't have to revisit? We have already accomplished this. We would have mentioned it again in 25, 26, but today we at COP28 can safely say we have covered this part of it. Because Ryan mentioned something, there's no tangible plan to start the ball rolling to phase out fossil fuel. I'm not seeing it happening for the next decade. I'm looking 2 decades down and we're going to be still having a conversation about still trying to phase it out because we are so dependent on it, right? We have to get persons to come off of that dependency syndrome and see the future. But then my question is directly to Hipolito, Dizzanne, and of course you, Ryan. Anyone can jump in on this. What has happened in the previous COPs that we can safely say we have covered it, this is where we're at, and we are moving forward? What did we accomplish, or was it all talk? Did we meet in vain? Did we spend millions of dollars traveling to these various countries for these symposiums and conferences? What came out of it? Is there an agreement that we're going to start something? I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that we are still having a conversation. And I think at 28, we should have been talking about, you remember when we did this? We should be talking about results.
Yeah. I think Dizzanne is best to take that. She's attended 4 COPs. She's been at these COPs.
No, yeah, thank you. What I was gonna say is that this, Davy, you're raising the exact point that I was trying to raise earlier. Is the fact that, every year they meet, right? And there's a revision of the text. And the hope from civil society is that, there would be a raising up of ambition, right? And that did not happen. I not just personally, but I feel as though this is the messaging and the narrative that has come out of civil society, is that COP28 was not ambitious. It was very much an exposition for oil companies and gas companies. And it has been greenwashed. Literally, the color scheme was green for this COP. but it has been greenwashed in a very, very underhanded way. And this is the messaging that has been shared. And I mean, yes, you have certain things that were achieved, like the loss and damage fund. Yes, fantastic. The loss and damage fund is operationalized. But as I said, those pledges that, that were made by these countries for climate vulnerable countries to get funding to deal with the impacts of climate change, that money, we don't know if that's ever going to reach us. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I don't know if this answers your question directly, but there needs to be a revitalization of this process, because otherwise we're just going to continue and we're going to reach the COP50 and the place is just going to be on fire, to be honest. And that's personally how I feel.
If you notice my language.
Yeah, and if I could.
Yeah, of course, Hipolito, I'm happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I just want to add, and I totally agree to what Dizzanne is saying. I think the question of whether or not there has been progress in the past few COPs, well, I guess it depends who is asking. Because if you ask the big polluter countries, if there has been any sort of progress for the last few COPs, they will tell you yes, they will tell you that they pledged this, they will tell you that they consulted with affected countries and this and that and what have you. On their end, they will say that there was, I guess, sufficient progress. But if you ask countries like Belize and Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and other states, countries around the Caribbean and Pacific region, they tell you that progress to our satisfaction has not been made. I mean, yes, you have the loss and damage fund that was established at this year's COP. But one of the things that OASIS and other countries like Belize were saying is that, okay, so you're pledging so many, I think it was $700 million as opposed to the $100 billion that we need every year. And not only that, these are pledges, these are promises. And what we've heard before is that too many promises that do not materialize. And not only that, how do we access these things? And one of the things that experts in Belize were telling me was that these are not, some of these money they are pledging are loans. So all of that was not revealed when it was launched. So all of that was it progress for us, for SIDS countries, for experts in the Caribbean? Like Dizzanne had mentioned, it was not ambitious enough. The language was not ambitious, and that's what I believe when it comes to whether or not there was progress in the past few COPs.
One of the things,
and I think I want to add to what Hipolito has said in terms of him mentioning progress for island nations. I would say that we have made a lot of progress as island nations, right? Because at the start of this, nobody wanted to hear from island nations. Nobody cared what Trinidad and Tobago had to say. Nobody cared what Guyana had to say. Nobody cared what Fiji had to say. But AOSIS, which is the Alliance of Small Island States, they're the negotiating bloc for island nations at COP, has such a powerful voice now that I think, that definitely warrants mentioning.
You took the words of my mouth, because I was going to ask Ryan now, and of course you guys, how effective and how much of a play did we get? And I'm not saying we as Trinidad and Tobago or Belize, or I'm talking CARICOM on a whole, the CARICOM Islands, Jamaica, everybody, Guyana. How much of a voice did we have at COP28?
I think it's growing. I think it's grown enormously. I think we've done very well for ourselves on the international stage since, I can say, maybe COP26. That was my first COP remotely. Dizzanne would have been to many more COPs. She could speak to a longer period. But I've been if I was to speak from a Caribbean national perspective, I'd say I'm very happy with a couple of things. One, not only just us at the international level and the level of attention we've gotten from the international media and these international officials. But more than that, I think what CARICOM has done very well since COP26 at least is they've spoken as one. So it's not just Trinidad and Tobago going with a message, Barbados going with another, Belize going with another, Suriname, Jamaica, everybody has a different message. You can see the genuine effort from CARICOM leadership to come together pre-COP and to have a common voice with a common message. And when they all speak together with that one common voice, it echoes across the room and everybody else hears it. But I'm interested to hear what both Hipolito and Dizzanne have to say about this.
Hipolito?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ryan. I've attended 2 COPs, and you see the unity with CARICOM, and you have different negotiators and specialists in these areas that they go and negotiate for CARICOM as a regional bloc. And that is what we needed, because before, when individual countries, they had issues going because they had a lot of consultations, a lot of meetings, negotiations happening at the same time in various areas of the COP grounds. So what CARICOM did was, you know what, it's one regional black island we are affected. It's better if you have one loud voice. And that voice has gotten stronger and louder over the years, and including COP28.
Dizzanne?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think that Caribbean countries are definitely taking hold of leadership as it relates to championing the causes of small island developing states. We have, our very own Prime Minister of Barbados, for instance, who, she's a superstar. Everybody looks forward to what she has to say. And, we have a lot of leaders from the Caribbean who are doing an amazing job out there representing at COP. And I really look up to them. And I think that it's something to be really proud of. Being in this space, you always look for people to be inspired by. And I am quite inspired by the leadership of the Caribbean countries, at least at COP. At least at COP, I'm quite inspired by how seriously they take the climate change issue. So I am really happy for that. And also this year, I think we had a really good representation by from young people at COP. I think since my first COP, which was in Paris, and that was COP21, and I really felt at that point like I was swimming in an ocean by myself.
I would imagine.
Not a lot of other young Caribbean people, and it's such a turnaround. I tell you, this year I met so many young Caribbean people at COP, and I was just really happy to see that representation.
So it means to say that an awareness of climate change and global warming, the message is reaching the masses. Sadly to say, back home here in Trinidad, I don't know what's happening out there in Barbados and Belize and Jamaica, Guyana, what their governments are doing. Maybe you guys who are paying attention to this a little more detail than I am can share some light. But coming out from COP28, what initiatives would have been handed out that you all can take that everybody would have been able to disburse from what I want to call a glorified symposium, you understand, of talks, and go back to their home countries in terms of edifying the public about climate change and how serious it is? What initiatives was handed out to you all to come back home with, not you all as journalists, but to the heads, that they can take back to their home countries and truly make an effort to edify their population as to what's happening on a global scale?
Yeah, if I could just take a very quick stab at this one, because I think it's important that I kind of answer your question in this way. The first thing is, I like to always tell people that covering, and Dizzanne and Hipolito know this, covering COP is exactly that. It's covering the conference. It's the global conference. It's the biggest conference of the year.
Right.
Maybe outside of the United Nations General Assembly, this is it. But that's exactly what we go there to do. Cover COP, cover the negotiations, cover what's coming out of it. And I don't mean to sound edifying is a large part of that, but I think the trick, Davy, is exactly what you're doing. I think the edifying part of it cannot be done at COP only. That's just COP.
But that's what I'm saying. So what is the leaders taking away to come home with?
Right.
That they can talk to their populace about?
Right. And I think this is where programs like you have us on right now, we come on, you invite the Minister of Planning, who is in charge of the environment, and this is where the real edifying takes place. COP is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
COP is 2
14
weeks.
days.
That's 14 days, and it's only high level. But you come onto a program in early January, and you've got people driving home from work or driving home from school. I think this is really where the edifying takes place, and that's just my way of answering it. I know that Dizzanne and Hipolito.
Any thoughts on this?
Hipolito, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I was really disappointed with the ministry after COP, because what they did then, yes, we interviewed the minister, the CEO, and other officials from Belize, their COP28, but as Brian had mentioned, it's only 2 weeks. All right. When they came back a couple of days after, they sent out just a long press releases. And I'm not sure about you, Ryan, but I hate long press releases, right? It doesn't go good for television.
The surest way to get lost.
Yeah, for real.
Right, exactly. And people get boring just reading press releases like that. We have a Ministry of Climate Change and we have a climate change unit.
Wow.
I think they're doing good work, but they're not educating people about what they're doing and why people should care. Because if you ask people here in Belize if they know what is climate change, they might figure it out based on the two words, climate is changing.
Right.
But what they'll say is that, you know what, 10 years ago, my house, my resident wasn't flooding. Now it's flooding crazy. And I would explain to them, you know, that's one of the effects of climate change. That's what's causing climate change. That's you're living climate change. You're being affected by climate change. So I think the government here in Belize, the ministry and the climate change unit can do a lot.
Well,
because a whole entire village.
Hipolito, put a pin right there. Put a pin right there because it's something Ryan just said about programs like this. A thought just hit me. If we do not believe that we could directly do something to impact or alter the outcome, as citizens, we would see it as, you know, that is not my problem. That is a problem for high level, for the government to see about. What you want me to do? That's the questions going to come out of the mouths. And it bears to ask you guys, you know, your thoughts on what can the average citizen do, their bid, to assist with climate change or with the removal of the fossil fuels and whatever, because as far as they're concerned, what I going to do? So you tell me about it and what next? What you want me to do? How I going to contribute? So I am wondering if at the COP28, if there is any sort of mentions, you know, in the smaller meetings, because I would imagine that there would be numerous meetings happening at these large conventions or summits, as it were. If there is any way that somebody, some learned person up there, whatever agenda, can speak to it, Dizzanne, because Hipolito, like he fell off, about how do we help our citizens back home to do their part in assisting with climate change.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have civil society representation at these events, because from there, it really is the civil society. Yes, government is important. Yes, the government sets the climate policy, and all of that is super important. Yes, right? Mm-hmm. There's no denying that. But civil society has access on the ground, guys. Civil society, you know, they're the ones that are operating within communities. They're the ones, civil society leaders can tell you who is who and who does what, and, you know, that sort of thing. So that's why it's really important to have civil society engagement in these sort of summits and these sort of events. Mm-hmm. And also being able, I think from a government perspective, being able to have some sort of campaign that can educate people. I'm not talking about just like the general public. I mean, you know, the importance of climate communications for your target audience, right? Mm-hmm. How can you get young people? Yeah. How can you get like Joseph in Standard 5 to understand the importance of climate change? And how can you get Edna, who is in, you know, I don't know, like 85 mm-hmm. to understand climate change?
Thank you so much.
You understand? Yeah. So having that kind of holistic campaign, national campaign, that actually drives home the message in a way that everybody can understand, I think is very important. And I think that is something that is lacking. But also, I would really like to urge the government to tap into that media space. You have people like Ryan, you have people like Kalain Hussein, who is one of our fellows this year at COP as well, you know, they're being engaged in the process and they have the ability to share the information. You know what I mean? So really tapping into the media, the new media, the multimedia space. Agreed. These are things that really help bringing home some sort of campaign that allows people to understand what COP28 is, how it affects my life, what can I do about it, without placing blame on individuals, because at the end of the day, it's climate policy.
Well, that's
you know what I mean? So
you said it best.
Yeah,
you said it best. And Ryan, I know you was a little distracted there briefly with a phone call, but what I was asking is, as the layman on the ground, right? We tend to think that if I can't do something about the situation, me being aware of it, okay, but what can I do? So when you're trying to tell the snow cone vendor, the nuts man, as she mentioned, the 5-year-old, the young teenager in Form 1, Form 2 in school, understand the young man who's just getting his first job at a bank or an insurance company, understand climate change. I'm thinking, what can I do about it?
Yeah, I want to answer it in two parts because I was asked this question in Dubai and I like my answer then that I want to share with you here. But the first part is that we can all do something, whether it's recycle or try to move towards more greener forms of energy, saving energy. We're not very good at that in Trinidad and Tobago. We leave the lights on, So that is one thing that we can do. We can, and we can all research how we could better treat the climate. The second thing, though, to build on Dizzanne's point, I think that's a critical point that she's made, and that's something that especially the young people listening to this program, that I want them in particular to listen to. And I'm going to be very quickly because I know you have, I think, the 5 o'clock news.
The 5 o'clock news,
The mobile phone, the smartphone that you have,
right.
the tablet, the computer, the literacy you have in these devices, it is an open window for you to be a storyteller, to be a game changer in this climate change movement. You can do it without having Davy coming on Davy's program, without a popular overdrive program. You could do it without being on television. You could do it on YouTube. You could do it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. You could be that communication tool because these things you don't have to subscribe to it. It doesn't cost you anything.
Yes.
So I think by if you really want to have an interest and want to be one of the players in this climate change space, you don't have to wait for Davy to call you to bring you on his program. You could do it right at your mobile phone.
Well said.
And I think this is a huge opportunity. And my final point is why am I speaking to the young people? Because you guys communicate. You guys have the key to communication. You were born with communication.
Yep.
We had to learn it.
Yep.
You guys were born in communication, and you guys are genuine communicators, and you guys could do it better than any other generation.
That is Ryan, I'll record what you say there and put that as a song bite on my show for the balance of this month because it's well said. I mean, Hipolito, I know he fell off a little bit, so Hipolito, if you're still hearing us over the phone, thank you so much for being with us. And of course, Dizzanne, before we run out of time, I want to say thank you so much as well for chiming in on the conversation this afternoon.
Can I just add something there, Davy?
About 30 seconds, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to second what Ryan said.
Yes.
And add that Caribbean storytelling is what we need. It is not out there. The Caribbean narrative is not strong out there, and we need more of it. That's all. And
just to add to what Hipolito said, he said this long, drawn, boring reading. I mean, we're in an era where if I get a video for 6 minutes long, I'm not going to look at that video for a while. Probably if I'm in the restroom and I have some time, or I'm driving and I'm plugging my headset while I'm driving, I put it on the stand and I'm listening to the video. So other than that, I ain't going to watch it. But if I see something for 35 seconds, 42 seconds, a minute even, a minute and a half, I'd look at it very quickly to see what it's about. So we have that ability with us, and I think we should utilize it to the best and fullest advantage in order to be a small player, as it were, in climate change. So guys, thank you so much. I'm out of time, but Dizzanne, thank you again, and stay safe and enjoy the new year. Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Bye-bye. And of course, Ryan, well, I'll see you every day when you're here. Thank you again, buddy. I'm living the dream through your eyes.
I appreciate it, Davy, and I appreciate you making time for such an important conversation on your program.
I did it yesterday, and when I saw it again, I said, you know what? I'm not going to shy away from it. When Melissa asked me if I'm going to do it, I'm saying I'm not shying away. We're going to do this because I think the 9-day wonder has to stop. Let's let the white noise come out and let's make noise about it. I will continue to talk for it. You come back next month and we're going to talk about it again. We're going to talk about it again. We're going to keep that awareness. I think we should have a climate segment once a month. So there's no freedom. We're giving up. All you wake up and stop wasting energy. Yeah. So Ryan, I want to say much love and thank you so much. I'm coming upstairs to join you on the 7 o'clock news.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much to your listeners as well, Davy.
Indeed so. Guys, we take a quick break. Of course, we are a few seconds away from the 5 o'clock news update. When we come back, the big show continues here on Freedom 106.5.